Hey everyone, Future Andrew here. And before we get started, I wanted to give a special shout out to a couple of other podcasts I've been following for a little while, and as a thank you for them giving a shout out to me on their platforms. So first off, thank you to the Comic Book Block, where they cover all things comics, DC, Marvel, Image, crossovers, everything they're reading. It's wonderful. Their knowledge is so impressive, all the stories, old, new, and just constantly amazes me at how much information they can store in their heads with everything going on in the world of comics. I also wanted to give a thank you and a shout out to the Invincible podcast. Probably the best Invincible podcast there is out there. And they're right now doing a long coverage of the Battle Beast comic as that's coming out, since it fits inside the Invincible universe. These guys are some of the most diehard Invincible fans I've ever seen, and I just love hearing their breakdown for each of the different issues as it keeps coming out. Thanks again to both of these different podcasts. If you think they're just as interesting as I do, then I highly recommend you go check them out. You won't regret it. Links to their two shows will be in the description. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
And now we return you to our regular scheduled program, In Progress.
Greetings, fellow nerds, and welcome to yet another episode of Two Nerds vs. the Internet. My name is Andrew, and I am the resident nerd and host. Tag along each week as I'm joined by fellow nerds, and we discuss and debate a wide variety of topics across several different fandoms, giving our points of view on why it's the best and why you should agree with us. Well, for this special episode, my guests and I are going to have a bit of a debate. And yeah, I said guests with an S. This is only the second time I've had more than one guest, so feel special, guys. But this time it's going to be a different way of doing it, and you'll see. And we are going to actually have a bit of a debate, not just discuss this time. So with that, let's go ahead and introduce my guests for the episode. I've got Tyler and Anthony. Guys, welcome back to the show. Woo!
How's it going?
So, for those of you who are the biggest of nerds among us, which is not just us, but our followers, Anthony, as you'll recall, was on an episode with me talking about Pokemon, which is important to today's episode because at this point you're definitely reading the title of the episode and you understand what we're talking about. But I still wanted to build the drama to get to it, so I brought Anthony in as my Pokemon expert. And Tyler, well, we've had Tyler on here several different times. This is fourth. This is your fourth time being on the show, Tyler. We're going to have to fix
It's like I'm a nerd or something.
You're a nerd. That's all I can say. So yeah, Tyler's old news. We don't have to introduce that guy anymore. But with that, we are going to turn to Anthony. What is the nerdiest thing you've done this past week?
Okay, so let's see. I'm currently building out a Pokemon fantasy draft, coding it all the way. So I've been tinkering with that. It's sort of a mix between like fantasy football and Pokemon. So I'm going to keep on adding some more code to that and hopefully get something out at some point later this year.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Tyler, what's the nerdiest thing you've done this week?
Well, I think I mentioned in the last episode that I was on that we were in the process of unpacking from a move.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent some time getting the collection, a small portion of the collection unpacked and in shelves and up on display, and still far from a final decision on where everything's going to end up going. But yeah, I spent many hours over the last week getting all that stuff back out of boxes finally and trying to figure out what's going to go where in our new place.
Well, Tyler, I personally think, and I think some of our fans would agree, some of those action figures would look better out of the packaging. So, and
I disagree.
Anthony agrees.
Yep.
So I think all of our fans should comment below if they should stay in the packaging or stay out. And I tell you what, Tyler, you got to make me a deal. If I can get 2 people to comment on this that are not any of the 3 of us, 2 people that are not the 3 of us, just natural listeners, no incentivizing of anyone, you got to take one thing out of a package.
Let's make it 20.
Oh, come on.
Well, you said one thing? You said one thing?
One thing. If 2 people
Okay.
who
Deal.
are not the 3 of us, and I won't ask anyone in person to do it,
Okay.
you got to take
got
one
a
thing
deal.
out. Okay?
I'll do it.
Sweet. You guys heard him. Please, someone
I'll
comment
send
below. Take
photographic
it out of
and
the
or
packaging.
video evidence.
And I also think, Anthony, can't be your sister. Tyler, it can't be Ryan. Because that's just
Fair
cheating.
enough.
That's just cheating. Okay? So no one like super close either. It's got to be like all the other people who are listening. All 20 of those other people who listen. Well, cool, guys. Very cool. Let's dive into it today. So, as I said, if you're this far into the episode, you already know what the title of this episode is because I was silly and put the episode title on there. But we are going to have that debate that I mentioned in the early episode 0, Pokemon versus Digimon. And some of you might be thinking, well, but Andrew, you've not done an episode on Digimon yet. And you know what? That honestly kind of fits for the topic of Digimon, as we're going to get into. And what's going to make this one special, I'm not your host today. I'm doing the intro because I'm the guy who's got to do the intro and I got to do all the talking. And these two always let me do all the talking because they know I like hearing my own voice. Tyler is our host of the episode. So with that, I'm not host anymore. I'm the nerd who gets to argue. Well,
All right. Well,
argue.
now that I'm in control, I can finally boot Andrew off of here and run the show the way it's supposed to be. No, this is going to be excellent. I've been really looking forward to this one, and I'll admit that the reason I wanted to be the moderator for this when Andrew asked if I would be on this episode rather than one of the people taking a side on the debate is because I feel like I'm going to be the middle ground filthy casual for both series. I like them
The
both,
filthy casual.
but yeah, I am. Like I don't have like super deep background in the lore. I've dabbled in both series quite a bit, enough to be able to talk about both, but I'm far from an expert. I don't really feel like I could be doing an episode on either one like Anthony did with Pokemon or anything like that. So I'm excited to see where this goes. So, but before we get into the debate proper, and we kind of alluded to this, I do kind of feel like we should maybe address the elephant in the room a little bit, which is that the debate between these two series, we are all fully aware, is completely ridiculous. You
Yes, because
can't get
Digimon's
more.
the better one. Debate closed.
We'll
Digimon's
see.
the
We'll
better one.
see. To be determined. To be determined. Listen and find out. But in all seriousness, like the two series, I think a lot of people, especially in the West, we conflate them as if they are equals because they both started as like kids animes about young adolescent
Yep.
kids that had these monster pals and they would go on wacky adventures. And at least in my perspective, growing up, it always felt like Digimon was kind of trying to be like the edgy ripoff of Pokemon.
Yep.
But in reality, like the series couldn't be that much more different, right? Like, I mean, a lot of people probably aren't going to be aware that Digimon actually existed as a entity before Pokemon did.
Now, did it? I'm curious what your research says, because mine says that the first digital monster toy, which was what led way to Digimon, came out from Bandai in 1997 in Japan, in mid to early 97.
Really? That was the first one?
That was the first time a digital monster toy came out for Digimon before it became named Digimon.
Yeah.
Now, because I'm a big nerd and I have my notes pulled up, Anthony, do you remember when Pokemon was pitched to Nintendo?
I know that it released in '96, but the pitch of it, I'm wondering if it was '95 or '94. I can't remember.
1990 is when it was
Oh,
first
90.
pitched to
Okay.
Nintendo, and you are correct that Pocket Monsters Red and Green came out in February of 96.
See, like I said, the filthy casual.
Well, as the guy arguing for Digimon, I had to do my homework. I had to make sure I had these things right. But yes,
Yeah.
and I think this is kind of a good point to start with a little bit of the history for Digimon. Just enough to tantalize you. And what I will say, not you guys, I hope you're tantalized by this conversation and not like, oh god, this again. Um, so Digimon started from being a little digital pet called a digital monster that came out in 97. I will admit, probably came from Pokemon. The fact that they had Pokemon as a game that was a little bitty Game Boy that you could run around and collect digital monsters that you kept in your pocket called Pocket Monsters probably gave some credence to where digital monsters came from of this little bitty toy that you fed. Okay?
So there's also a little bit more to that, though,
Go on.
which is the massive Tamagotchi craze that was
Yes.
happening at the time.
Yes.
And so some of the research that I was doing said that the reason Digimon specifically came about was when Bandai was making these Tamagotchis, they were selling insanely well, but only to girls. And they wanted to sell to boys.
So they
And
make
so they
monster
said,
version.
now we have to make them monsters instead
Yep.
of cute little pets. And then we're going to make them fight because that's what boys like to do. And
true.
that's how they took this huge Tamagotchi craze, rebranded as Digimon, and that was the original incarnation of the Digimon.
That
But
explains why
I
all-
guarantee you there was some aspect of like seeing what Pokemon was doing and kind of
100%.
building off of each other there.
100%.
That makes sense why all the monsters have guns.
Not all of them. Hang on. No.
A good majority.
No. Some of them have magical staffs and wings and look like angels.
And some are missiles.
Some are missiles. Some are entire planet-sized things. Some are sharks. Don't. No. I see what you're doing there, Anthony. You're trying to discredit before we even get into it. I'm not having it. So there's a little bit of back and forth there because then that makes me wonder, when did Tamagotchi come out relative to the first Pokemon game? And I don't know that number, but I have to think all of this kind of happened at the same time, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Here's something crazy.
Yeah, I think the first Tamagotchi came out, it was in the back half of 96.
Okay, so it was right around the same time as Pocket Monsters was probably big and getting bigger. And I have to imagine they had been working on it since the beginning of the year when Pokemon came out.
I would think so, yeah.
I would think so. So it all happened simultaneously. Pokemon probably slandered Digimon saying, you stole our idea, blah, blah, blah. The anime for Pokemon came out in, what do we say, September of 98 in Japan. It hit in March of 99 for Digimon's anime. So, I mean, that was right after. There's no way they could have seen the first episodes of the Pokemon anime and said, oh, we can do that, but better. And rushed to get something out by March. No way. Not happening. So those are both in work at the same time, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I will concede Digimon probably stole some concepts or borrowed some concepts from Pokemon. Where I think that this debate really kind of starts, and the reason I think it's kind of fun that we did a whole episode on Pokemon, didn't do one on Digimon, is more often than not, Pokemon is the more popular one. In most pop culture, you show a picture of a Pokemon versus a Digimon, people are going to be able to say, oh, that's a Pokemon, and I think the other one is too, but I don't know it. Because Digimon just aren't as worldwide popular. But I'm here today to say Digimon is a better franchise, Digimon is a better series, Digimon has better stuff. Sometimes. We'll get into that. That's my history lesson. Back to the host. Sorry.
All right, excellent. Well, with that, before we get into the debate proper, I've got a couple of questions to just kind of prime the audience to the different series and what you guys think of them. So for the first one here, Anthony, we'll start with you. What is your first experience with Pokemon?
Yeah, so my first experience with Pokemon was playing actually the Game Boy Color version of Pokemon Red. And then that kind of led down to my perpetual growth of loving Pokemon.
Very nice. And Andrew, what was your first experience with Digimon?
It was watching the original Digimon series, and I say original, it was Digimon Series Adventure 1, I think is like the full title of it. It was watching that and just loving the characters, loving the differences between it and Pokemon. I was definitely in on the Pokemon craze, and this helped scratch an itch in a slightly different way with different characters and different stories. I'll concede the original Pokemon back when we were kids, that was like top notch. Digimon was top notch. It was all just fantastic. But it was that original cartoon series that got me in. I didn't have a Tamagotchi. I didn't have the little pocket Digimon. I was straight into the cartoon.
Nice. So then, what is your favorite Digimon and why?
Oh, it's Vmon. It's not even the one from the original series. Agumon is cool. Vmon is cooler. And Vmon's cooler because of all the other things Vmon gets to do. So Pokemon has its evolutional chain. Vmon got Digi Eggs, where he could be two, three different things that he could digivolve into temporarily and de-digivolve, as well as Vmon had his own evolution line, which looks just awesome to me, way cooler than Greymon. And Vmon was the first one in the cartoons that could freaking DNA digivolve into something just so awesome. He had to have Stingmon with him, but Vmon was half of that, and that was just so cool to me. Plus, he's like, one of the main characters, so, he kind of.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Unlike Anthony's favorite, which isn't a main character.
Oh, well, Anthony, what's your favorite Pokemon?
I like the Porygon line.
See.
The reason, well, besides the fact that I'm a programmer and now it pairs well with that, I liked Porygon because in the original games you had to like gamble. You literally had to gamble to get enough coins to be able to get this Pokemon. And the amount of hours I wasted, literally, trying to get the RNG gods to basically give me everything I wanted every single time.
Yep.
Yeah, no. So it was a bunch of hard work, and I really enjoyed finally getting Porygon for 9999 coins, and enjoying that. But
So did you run a Porygon back in your Gen 1 playthroughs?
in my very first playthrough, I did. Um, when I did it again afterwards, and in my very first playthrough, I actually ran with um, Bulbasaur actually in Pokemon Red.
Good choice. Good
Um,
choice.
and the reason I did this because I was like, okay, well, I know that the cartridge, Pokemon is Charmander and Charizard, that line. But I was like, I want something else. I wanted to try something different. And yeah, then I did Porygon through Celadon, and then uh, I don't remember anything else that I used on that gameplay. But I remember Porygon just because I did not progress the storyline for the longest time. Yeah.
Isn't it kind of interesting, just as a little wild tangent here, that red and blue and green and yellow, and then their remakes, all two sets of remakes, are the only Pokemon games that your starter is on the cartridge and box arts, but in
And not
every
your
other one of
legendary.
them, it's the legendary.
Yeah.
It's
And I
kind of
think that
But
interesting.
might have been due to the fact that, like in all the subsequent games, they released them in like pairs,
Yep,
or
yep.
if there was a third variant, it was usually like a year or two afterwards.
But they could have
Whereas
even done the
in these,
legendary birds.
yeah, they also didn't have a good idea about the legendaries to
mhm,
begin with
Yep,
because I think I've
that's
sent
true.
this to you personally. We didn't get to discuss it during the last discussion on Pokemon. There's a picture on one of the first episodes of Pokemon that aired where they're talking about the legendary
bird.
Pokemon, and there's actually four characters there. It's the three birds and then an Arcanine. Because in the Pokédex entry, Arcanine is listed as the legendary Pokemon. And so they really didn't have it fully grained out of what legendaries were going to be.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now, did
So
that become part of the inspiration behind Entei?
it could have been.
That makes sense.
We don't know because you would think that by the time the anime aired out, since the first episode has Ho-Oh listed, that they've
Mm-hmm.
already started thinking about Gen 2 Pokemon,
Yeah.
Yep.
and so because that released in '98, so by that point, yeah, it's very close to them coming out with Gold and Silver,
Yep.
so.
Yep.
It could be that possibly by that point, they're like, okay, well, we couldn't include Arcanine. Let's do something else with it.
Yeah. Very possible. Sorry, just a little side tangent that my brain thought of is like, oh, wow, that is a kind of an interesting thought. I'd
Yeah.
never stopped to think about. I'm sure I've heard it before, but
Well, and they also in those first gen of games, like you look at all the subsequent ones where your box art legendary is a like a integral part of the story. You have to encounter them as part of your story, and the story that you play through centers around that legendary. And in Gen 1, the big legendary that, if you have anything that has a story centered around it, it's Mewtwo.
Right.
And it's just Mewtwo, because Mew could maybe be the second one of the duo, but that was an event exclusive in Gen 1.
Right.
And so, yeah, the whole concept of how the legendaries fit into the story and the larger decks, and I still think they were developing that concept to begin with. And that's why I think when they finally got around to Crystal, they ended up having to go with Suicune, who wasn't Lugia or Ho-Oh.
Yep. That's a good point. Sorry for the derailment. It's just, like I said, wild thought. So
nope, I like it. All right, well then, so we'll get on to the next question. And I want to start with Andrew on this one, because the next question that I want to ask you guys is, of the mainline games of your franchise, which one do you think is the best and why? And Andrew, you've got a little bonus part of that, which is, how do you define which games are the mainline games for Digimon?
This is a trick question. No, it's a good question, and it's a legitimate question. And there's so many different debates online about what is a good Digimon game. And I'm actually going to mention Jaden Animations trying to play Digimon. She's got this funny video where she asked this question, what game should I play? And based on what she was looking for, what kind of a game she wanted to play, the internet told her one. And I've tried that game, and it is weird. It's hard. It doesn't make sense. It's the bad side of Digimon. I'll be completely honest. But what's funny about that is, because there are enough Digimon fans out there who have the nostalgia for this game, or for that game, I guess I should say, they claim it to be the best. And of what was available up to that point, yeah. As of today, what I would say for your mainline story franchise, it's going to be Digimon Story. And I stop at Digimon Story because that's typically where they're going to have their main types of games come from. Lots of different spin-offs, kind of like Pokemon Red and Blue, Black and White, X and Y. Each one of those is its own story, self-contained, in its world of Pokemon that can somewhat interconnect, and you're really not going to experience too huge of a change from one Pokemon game to the next, other than maybe a couple of quality life improvements, maybe a big, what am I?
You'll get the region change. You'll get the new iteration of the story, the new decks.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have a huge mechanical change. You're still running around. You're still catching monsters to build up your team.
Yep.
And then you use that team to battle and progress into higher and higher level areas.
And I will say, Digimon, even in its story games, has had a few key mechanics that are consistent. What I would say is the best one is kind of a split question, because they came out not at exactly the same time. One is pseudo a sequel to the other, but today if you're going to buy one, you're going to get both in the same pack. And that's Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory. They both revolve around basically the same core story, kind of told from two different perspectives of that story. Things kind of passing with each other, happening at around the same time. What makes these so good is, for one, they're 10 years old and they look great. Can Pokemon say that a 10-year-old game at this point looks as good as its modern games?
Now, dude, they can't say their modern games look good.
I was about to say, and I'm the one that's supposed to defend Pokemon. You're not making it easy for me.
You're welcome. Digimon's better. Digimon's Story Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory are arguably the best games we currently have access to. And I say currently because the intent of this episode is to have it air just before the new Digimon story Time Stranger comes out, which is a
Excellent.
couple weeks before Pokemon. So you know which one I'm going to be invested in by the time Pokemon comes out? Digimon. Anyway, there's not the thousands of Digimon available in the game. There are a lot of them, but there's a good 400 of them. Um, Digimon's always had its capture mechanic being that you scan a Digimon while you're out in the wild. You see it, you get some percentage of scan, anywhere between like 5, 10, 15%, depending on like how evolved it is, how rare it is, all that kind of thing. And then once you've hit 100%, you get to generate it from what you've seen. So you have to randomly encounter whichever one you want until you've encountered enough of it, then go back to your base of operations. And this holds true for a lot of the different Digimon games. You go back to your base of operations, you bring it into your party. Your party usually has some kind of restrictions on it based on quantity, or even in these games specifically, you have a certain amount of slot availability because you're early in the game, and you'll find items that'll open it up to being able to have more just based on whatever stat they've assigned to each of the different Digimon having some point value. That way you can't just have a penultimate Digimon at the beginning of the game because you don't have enough points for one of those. Even if you were to be a mad lad and grind like crazy before the first like boss fight, you're not going to get a stupid strong thing because of those kinds of restrictions. Um, in my opinion, it's also a really good game because it has good mechanics that I can remember texting you guys about it when I first started playing it, going, why can't Pokemon do this? Like, 3
And to
Digimon.
think, the only reason you even played it was because I let you borrow my copy.
I know! I'm like, what am I thinking? Why haven't I played this sooner? And it's amazing. I love it. You can have 3 Digimon following you, not just one. And Pokemon only sometimes gets one following you to look correct. All 3 Digimon legitimately run behind your character. Your character is a middle to late teenage, if not early adult. So they're not just some like 10-year-old kid out on their own adventure. There's some like pseudo adult based story going on in this, which I don't want to like spoil too much for anyone. I want you to go out and try this. And Anthony, I think you need to try it. I know you've seen me play it.
No, I think you even forced me to start the base of it, and I didn't get that far
You
into
did.
it. But you wanted me to see the mechanics of how uh, it originally played, which I have never even played any form of Digimon. So uh, I did enjoy just your little synopsis of how the games usually go, and I basically the 10 minutes of me playing the game
Right.
of what I did. But yeah, no, I agree. It did have some good quality of life things that Pokemon could kind of take,
And
some
I think
feedback from.
I think the best thing about the Digimon game is that all of the Digimon's moves, one, were more or less specific to each one of them. Some of them had cross moves that were fairly similar and your animations were fairly similar. But whatever their like penultimate move that they had was, it had its own specialty animation. Pokemon can't even hardly get that right. And I know Pokemon's only just left the world of handhelds.
Well, let me just say this though, like in Pokemon Stadium,
Okay, but see,
in
hang on,
Pokemon
hang on.
Stadium,
Is Pokemon Stadium even relevant right now, or is it just too old and out in state?
it's very old. No, but the reason that I wanted to say what you were saying on that game was very old. Why can't they still do something similar to this age, right? So that's kind of where I'm alluding to. But
I
in
agree.
Pokemon Stadium, you could teach certain moves to certain Pokemon, and they would have a different animation
Hmm.
depending on who was using it.
Agreed.
And so it's like similarly, it's like why can't we have different, because not everyone's using the same type of move
Right.
all the time. Like you talk
If you
about
could do
like
it 20 years
blasting.
ago, you could do it now.
Yeah, it's like that has cannons. Why aren't you shooting water from the cannons, and stuff and just random stuff? It's like what makes sense
Blastoise
for the character?
shooting water cannon from his chest when he
Yeah,
literally has cannons coming out of the sides of him. I don't know. That's
No, very valid point. But I do want to ask Andrew. I'm curious. You mentioned that video where it was the bad side of Digimon. I'm curious because my personal favorite game in the Digimon series is actually the very first one of the Digimon storyline
hmm
called Digimon World DS, which is absurdly confusing because the other potential mainline series of games is the Digimon World line, which Digimon World DS is not a part of. It's part of the storyline.
It's so confusing, dude. It doesn't make sense. And the one, I don't know if you've seen Jaden Animation's video on it. She picks Digimon Story Dawn and Dusk. They were trying to do like the
Oh,
whole Pokemon thing.
yeah, those are the sequel to Digimon World DS.
And I almost picked up Digimon World DS because I was like, should I do that one? But everyone was like, no, Dawn and Dusk is a little bit better, more quality of life improvements. I was like, okay, let's give it a
I
try.
like them both. I think they're both great.
For its time, good game. For today, no, sorry, too confusing. And it's one of those games that even now that I have the internet and I have guides telling me how to do XYZ, I still can't figure it out because it's just overly complex in what does it take to digivolve something. And something that is nice about Digimon versus Pokemon is it does tell you flat out on your Digi device, hey, this Digimon has to hit these stats, and once they've hit those stats, you're good to go. Cool. How do you train those stats? What do you do to get those stats? Or in Digimon Dawn and Dusk, what thing gives you which experience that you need 30,000 of to have to be able to go up a level? Why do I need 30,000 of a thing, and why is it everything I'm killing only gives me 100? What? And you had to take one side quest at a time. You'd take your side quest from the main area, you'd leave that area, you'd had to go find the thing. You'd come back and they'd be like, "Hey, can you go back to that exact area you were just in and do this other side quest?" And so you'd go back to the area, find another thing, and go back and drop it off. And they're like, "Hey, one more time, can you go to that same area for a third time?" And I'm like, "Give me all the side quests at once, please, please,
Man, I
please."
must really have my nostalgia goggles on then, because none of that has ever bothered me when I've gone back to replay it.
Oh my god. That's all
Which
I can say.
that reminds me, if you like that kind of sequence, which this isn't one of like the mainline Pokemon games, but those other like mystery dungeon ones where you take
Mm,
missions, you
Hmm.
can stack missions at once if it's in the same area, so you can
sure,
just get them all done
sure.
instead of yes doing the okay do one go back oh I have to go back again. It's like no, just
Right,
give me everything I need.
right.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. I'm done. I'm off my soapbox.
All right. Well, then that will take us over to Anthony, and I'm curious if you've got quite the depth of your answer that Andrew did. But what is your favorite mainline Pokemon game?
So I'm gonna stick with the Gen 4 line of Pokemon because this is where I feel um, had probably the best lineup of Pokemon games. Uh,
So that's Diamond and Pearl, correct?
and Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Um,
Oh, okay,
because
okay.
they
So
were
the Gen 2
remakes, but
remakes.
they're Gen 4, you know, the remakes are the quality of life. But yes, Gen 4 probably had the what I would consider, and I know this is a biased answer because some people will say that, you know, Black and White, you know, and Black and White 2 are the best games overall. I think they have the best story, Black and White for they have the best story, but I think Gen 4 games kind of just hit everything that everyone wanted, you know. Um, I would have to say that between the two different ones, I would have to go with Heart Gold and Soul Silver as the remakes. Not
Beautiful.
only does the game and the story give you basically two games. You know, you're going through the first region in Johto, and then once you've completed it, have the ability to play the Kanto area that you know most people were used to. That's you know that's very nice. You know, from a perspective, I think games need to do that more often, where they allow you to explore another region and with the ability to you know which this is something that Pokemon doesn't do well, and they started trying to do it in Scarlet and Violet, where they do the you know allowing you to freely explore the different bosses at your own pace and just like level scale whatever you're doing. They need to do a better you know job at sort of that ability of you know power you know scale the opponents so they can you know allow the exploration of different areas because it's like oh you've beat the game the base game and you're in your 60s. Well, the rest of the game's about to be so hard for you because we're about to add all of this extra stuff. But yeah, just to answer your question, I think Heart Gold, Soul Silver, probably my favorite, and it's also a lot of the fandom's favorite, game. So
It's my
Yeah,
favorite.
I love going back to Soul Silver every now and then. I've got so many great memories with it. Still have it, still play it occasionally. My personal favorite is Emerald. I love Gen 3. And of course, Omega Ruby was a phenomenal remake from that gen. I feel like I don't know. Me and my wife talk about this every now and then that we still feel like that kind of was the pinnacle of the series, and it's only gone downhill from
Well,
there.
well,
But
that's also was one of the last like kind of like real base sprite game, right? Because like once you get off the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, the DS line, although it was still sprites, it kind of had like a different visual like effect to it. They were trying to add some 3D aspects to it. They were still trying to use
oh
the
yeah,
sprite layout. So I agree that those Gen 3 games very solid because they stuck to kind of just like slightly improving what they had done with Gen 1 and Gen 2 without making too much of a change. And then once you
yep.
got to the DS line,
Well, and then of course the nostalgia for being able to boot up Leaf Green and play back through Gen 1, which is to this day I've got, the entire Kanto map memorized in my head and what routes to encounter what Pokemon on, and being able to play that with updated graphics and colors and mechanics, hard to beat that for sure.
yeah.
All right, awesome. So we know what we think about the games. So now we're going to move on to the other critical part that was like probably equally as responsible for both of these series' popularity, and that was their TV shows.
I win.
So, well, we'll see.
No, no,
We'll see.
I win.
So, Anthony, what are your thoughts on the Pokemon anime in general? And this is not just like the original series that we all grew up watching, but like even today, the stuff that they're coming out with now. If you have familiarity with it, what are your thoughts on that and how they've handled the series?
Can I interject for a second? You guys grew up. I didn't think we were supposed to grow up yet. I still
Oh,
watch the
I
original
said
I'm
series.
still
growing,
a child.
actively happening.
I'm in my 30s and still being a nerd, so I don't think we grew up. And we're on this channel right now, so we did not grow up.
Fair, 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 fair. Okay, just I'm making sure y'all didn't like get old on me or something. That. Okay, because I
I
still
don't know. I mean, I did wake up with my back hurting a little bit, but
ignore it. It's fine. Sorry,
Yeah,
had to throw
no,
that in.
no. But yeah, the anime. So yes, most people know Ash, and he had, tw- 26 seasons, or is it 27? 20, I think it's 27. I think that extra, sort of send off that they did for him, I don't know if that's considered like an extra season or not. We'll just wrap it into just a final. So we'll just say 27 just to give a whole number. But he did 27 seasons and it took him 25 years as a 10-year-old to become champion, you know? So, and then if anyone really loved the anime, they did some other spin-offs like Chronicles where they, went off of some other storyline, other main line characters. And then they also had um, there's the one where they followed Red Generations, I believe is what it was called. And
so
then
good,
they have the
so
new
good.
one, which is Horizons, which is following another new protagonist, and so overall they know that they have people locked and loaded if they enjoy the anime. I will say that over the years they have improved in the quality of the art style,
Yes.
which makes it very captivating,
Yep.
kind of attracts new people that haven't really enjoyed the earlier episodes because those early episodes were rough, but then again they were hand drawn. They it took them a long time to actually produce these episodes, so you got to appreciate that for what it is.
Yep.
Um, but one thing that the anime doesn't, that kind of makes you misjudge than the games, is that they have all these extra things of like more than learning four moves. They have dodging. They have Pokemon that never make an appearance of different like appearance in the games. It's like, what's a crystal onyx and why is it not a rock type? It's like, why is this shiny Kecleon purple and then there's like no purple Kecleon everywhere, like anywhere?
And what is a GS ball?
Yo,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The whole thing that just kind of went over. They were like, "Well, we were intending to do the Celebi event for it, and then we didn't do it, or it was like to a very minimal amount of people. Well, let's hope everyone forgot about it." No, we all remember.
Exactly.
Like, we all remember this GS ball. Um, but yeah, so the anime has a lot of episodes. I am actually currently rewatching the Pokemon episodes chronologically. We're with my sister, and we're actually just a few episodes into the Johto, which is season 3. And I personally have watched all the way through Gen 3 and then a little bit of Gen 4.
Hmm.
And then I've watched a few episodes here and there of the remainder of them. And I've watched all of Journeys, which is where the show ended.
Yep.
But
Yep.
overall, if you haven't watched it, I would highly recommend it. You can actually watch some of the episodes on YouTube through the actual Pokemon channel's
Hmm.
account. They upload a new episode every now and then, and I think they have through. Um, they're not finished with Johto yet, but it's pretty high up in the episodes in there. Um,
Wow. All right, excellent. Well, so Andrew, what about Digimon? What are your thoughts on their anime series? Because I know they have handled things quite a bit differently over the years.
Uh, Very much so. And again, this is where I have to concede. Pokemon has some good. Pokemon has its bad. Digimon has its good, and then I would consider more bad. Um, but the good. The reason I'm here to tell you it's good. Adventures 1, Adventures 2, and Adventures 3. Adventures 1 is your original, God, what is it? 6, 8, 8 kids? Yeah. It's 7 and then Kari gets added in. Right? So it's 8
Yeah,
by
because
like mid-season
yeah,
because the original 7 are all on some summer camp together. And
yep.
then they get dropped into this world, this digital world that they know nothing about, and they don't hardly know each other and they have to become friends. Okay, well, right off the bat, it's not just one 10-year-old. It's 6 10-year olds and one like 5 or 6 year old who's his younger brother. Okay, cool. We have a lot of different personalities there. We don't have just one Ash Ketchum. Additionally, the Digimon talk and have conversations with their Digi-destined partner. And it's not just freaking Pikachu going Pika Pika. Which was so cool to me as a kid. That my best friend that's this cool creature that can do these awesome things has his own thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And it made me love those characters that much more. And then, and here's where Digimon does it better. Adventures 2 brought in a new cast of people, as well as your original cast of people that had aged like 3 or 4 years. Ash Ketchum for 25 freaking years is 10 years old. How? How is this Pikachu not like level 10,000? How? I don't understand. I just don't get it. But they've done some more good since then even. So we're going to skip over Adventures 3 for a moment. They've done a whole series of movies recently with the Digi-destined as adults trying to save
Mhm.
the world still, using their partners, still going through new struggles of trying to maintain their friendships because they're adults. And it's like the perfect reflection of like us because we were kids then and we're adults now and we're just trying to figure out how to do life, but we also want to still have fun and hang out with our friends. And Ash Ketchum's like, I finally won a battle, guys. Which,
No, that's a really cool point too. That they've been able to do that and do it well without it feeling like
yeah,
it's just like nostalgia bait.
yeah, right. I mean, it is nostalgia bait. I'll grant that, but it doesn't just feel pure nostalgia bait. They raise the stakes. They introduce new concepts. The characters are going through new walks of life and experiences. Like Mimi, the character from one of the first ones, was this preppy, pretty girl from America who was all about, oh, I have to look a certain way, I can't touch this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, she's like a full on freaking model by the end of it. And she's like, how do I make time for my friends? They need me. I have to balance this job that I have that I can't just up and leave. Or even like Joe, he goes on to be like a computer scientist or whatever. And he's like, crap, I have to get out of work to be able to go do this. And it's just cool that they all grew up and still had that connection with their friends and still had that connection with their Digimon. And their Digimon understood that they had grown up, but they didn't like lose connection with them or anything like that. I also really liked that in Digimon, you have your Digimon partner. You didn't have a team of 6 you could cycle through, which was its own thing. The battle system is completely different because it's more like kaiju fighting of let me have my big monster punch your big monster, and we have to figure out a new strategy of let's get this other big monster to punch this one because of their typing matchups that they don't even ever talk about. Whereas in Pokemon, you did have to have that strategy within the show. So the games obviously had to kind of incorporate a bit of that other strategy, but the show was good. And then Digimon Adventures 3, whole new cast of characters. But it also got meta on itself because a kid straight up invented a Digimon by drawing the thing. That's where what's his name? The little red one that's the dinosaur.
Guillemon.
Guillemon. Yeah, Guillemon was his drawing. But it is kind of fun that the main character has goggles and a dragon dino based character. But yeah, that was the one where you had to use like the cards that you swiped. And this is where it's meta because Digimon was a card game. They had like, oh, Digimon
I
exists.
thought that was Yu-Gi-Oh.
It was. That's a whole other thing, Tyler. But in this specific series of Digimon, they were trying to attribute the fact that a digital monster world existed and downplaying it by making it a card game for children, so that the adults wouldn't pay attention to what has happened in the world before of Digimon, because the Digimon have been out in their universe and they're like, oh, nothing to see here. So they made it a card game for kids to like be fascinated with, to make everyone be like, oh, it's just that silly card game those kids play. But then their Digimon came to life through the cards and through their digi devices because they were the digi destined and they had to still save the world, and they were more in the human world than they ever were in the digital world. And then it gets weird because the Digimon started fusing with the humans to Digivolve, and everyone went, what the heck are you doing here? Oh,
That's where lines were crossed.
that's where everyone went, wait a second, what is this series? Should I be watching that? Are we sure about this? But I just liked that each series, kind of like the games, introduced somewhat new mechanics, because your first series, they all just had their digi evolutions that they had to like learn to get to the next level by training, fighting, getting better. Cool. In the second series, they can't normally digivolve because there's a bad guy who's built all these spires that's blocking the digital ability of that. Okay. So they have to use digi eggs. So it's this new concept, new mechanic. It's fun, it's exciting. Great. And at times some of the original cast comes in, they help, and they're able to digivolve because of whatever reasons. Cool. So we still get some of those fan favorites from the original series. Digimon 3 introduces the cards. Digimon 4, human digi merger evolutions, and it's just weird. But I like that it was new, it was different. Each series had something for you, and I still go back and I watch seasons 1, 2, and 3 because each of them has those things that I was like drawn to as a kid. So
yeah. So I want to expand on, you mentioned the card aspect of it, the card game part of it. What experience do you have? It seems pretty clear that between the three of us, our primary exposure with both of these franchises were the video games and the TV show.
Yep.
And I would say that's probably the overwhelming majority of their fans. That if that isn't the only part of it they've interacted with, it's certainly the primary part of it that they've interacted with.
Yep.
But what are the other aspects of, we'll start with Andrew for Digimon, that you've interacted with? What are the spin-offs, the things outside of that realm that you've been able to experience or enjoy?
As a kid, I remember having, and this is part of the reason that Vmon from Digimon is my favorite. I had 2 of his digi eggs, and you like had it and it looked cool because it was the egg, but then you like started breaking it apart and pulling it apart, and it would digivolve into whatever Vmon was supposed to evolve into. So Raidramon and Flamedramon is what it would become. And I was like, this is so cool. Those were the best things about it. That's part of the reason that it solidified that Vmon was the coolest to me.
Yeah.
Since then, I do look back and can appreciate the other Digi-Eggs, but I I just had that nostalgia goggles for Vmon and what he had.
Yeah. They still release Digi-Egg toys to this day, don't they?
They have Digi-Egg replicas that you can buy, but eggs that transform, not so much. What they do have that Pokemon is starting to get into, but it's not quite there, are snap together model kits like what we've got for the Gundams. Digimon has some
Yes.
good snap together model kits.
Yes,
Pokemon has
they
a
do.
couple that are like super super basic, and I don't have a Pokemon one, but they're cool, but they're just so simple. And I hope Pokemon can get to a more complex one. But most of the complexity comes from the intricacy of the designs of these Digimon and the armor and the weapons and like all the little bitty niche parts of it. Beyond that, I never had a Digi device or even the little Tamagotchi thing, like I said earlier. Probably had Digimon clothing at some point. I've got a Digimon lapel pin we actually found from a street vendor in California after Comic Con. I was like, I gotta have that. And he's like, seriously? It's like, yes, I have to have the Vmon pin, and I should be wearing it right now. And I feel disappointed.
Oh, that's awesome.
But there are manga for Digimon. And there's certain Digimon that have come out of the manga that haven't even made it into the games or some of the mainline series.
Aren't there novels too?
I think so. I think so. But it's just cool that, like Pokemon, it's got all these other branches of it. It might not be as many, they might not be as prolific, but it is cool that it is there. Now, the big one that you're kind of alluding to is the Digimon card game. I played some early demo version of it on my phone, but they have a new version of it coming out, kind of like the Pokemon card game that they have the mobile app for, and I cannot wait for that to come out because I will be trying that.
Okay, so I remember because there was an old like original card game that started with the original series back in the 90s, and I'm pretty sure that's long dead.
Yes.
It had a PS1 game that was made that apparently has a bit of a cult following, but I don't have any personal experience with that. But I remember, I think it was right around 2020, maybe 2019. I feel like I remember it started like right around COVID times. They started a new game, and I want to say it came out. It started its first set was like 3 months before the Dragon Ball Super card game started.
They were right around.
Because I remember I was like, what are the chances that they both start?
Yep.
You know, a big push to break into card games at the same time.
Yep.
And at my local comic shop that I was going to at the time, it was all over the walls, and it seemed like it was selling really well because they were always cycling through new packs and new boosters and new like starter decks and theme decks. But then, honestly, over the last 3 years, I haven't seen it. I thought it was dead, to be honest.
It's still going, and I was just looking it up. There is a app called Digimon Allison, which is going to be a way for us to like play Magic the Gathering online or the Pokemon trading card game online for Digimon's game. And I'm gonna get it just to try it and see it, and because
is it free to play? Does it say?
Should be. There should be at least a free to play version and a hey, give us money.
I'll at least dabble in it if it's free.
Yeah. So that's one I'm excited to try.
Nice. Anthony, what about you for Pokemon?
Yeah, before I get to the Pokemon, I actually did have a Tamagotchi whenever I was younger. I think when a bunch of this stuff was coming out, so everyone wanted a bunch of these things. And it's like, well, they didn't have Pokemon. All right, well, what can I get? And I think my family was all right. Well, we can get one of these. It's like it's good enough.
Yeah. I actually had one of the like actual Bandai brand Digivices.
That's cool. Yeah. That's really cool.
I'm pretty sure I just like murdered the thing mercilessly over and over by not taking care of it properly because I was like,
that's like one of the key things you
of
gotta
course
do is
not.
pick up its poop.
Yeah.
But
I was a terrible Digimon owner,
Tamer.
or trainer is the term.
Tamer.
Tamer. That's what it was. I was a terrible tamer. But yeah, I also had. You mentioned your Digi Egg toy. I had a Garurumon that would transform into a Were-Garurumon.
Ooh.
And a Greymon that transformed into a Metal Greymon.
Beautiful.
So they were like little transformers, and I loved the heck out of those things.
Yep.
But sorry, Anthony, didn't mean to steal your thunder there.
Anytime you talk about just figurines or any additional accessories, it's always cool how much some of these nerd fandoms, kind of expand into.
Who would think I like figures?
Right? Yeah,
What a weird statement to make.
Yeah, it's not like it's an addiction or anything. But as far as any additional things for Pokemon that I got into, I had one of those like original Pikachu walkers. So essentially, it was like a Tamagotchi. It was in the shape of a Game Boy Color, and essentially it kind of it kept track of your steps to a degree. And they made different variants of it, that kind of went with like the gold and silver age, and then also with like the remakes of all those other ones. But I had one for the original yellow version, and essentially you had to take care of Pikachu in it like a Tamagotchi, and it would also poop, and you had to feed it and a bunch of other stuff. But with it though, you could somehow pair it into the original yellow, and you could get the flying Pikachu or the surfing Pikachu to get into that version of it, and you would unlock additional like quests and stuff like that. Which those original versions of Pikachu were hard to begin with because you had to pair it with Pokemon Stadium. But yeah, so I never got to do any of that stuff. But I had the Pokewalker thing. I had Pokemon cards, which that's kind of like the big one. And I believe that I didn't get to start collecting the cards until after I had already started watching the show and the games themselves. Just because buying each one of those packs, it was very hard to convince your mom or dad to be like, "Hey, can I get this pack? Oh, I want another one. I want another one." They kept releasing these different sets so often that it was
you gotta just crack you a pack or two. It's just
yeah, no, exactly.
maybe this one's got the shiny.
It's after a while they're like, okay, why do you want to keep collecting these things? So it's like it's just cardboard, and it's the same things, just in a different variant, styling. So the cards were a lot.
What, you didn't like your 17th Weedle? Come
Yeah,
on.
no,
No. Hang on.
they couldn't understand it.
It wasn't the 17th Weedle. It was the 10th version of Pikachu in their third set of cards. It was, fat Pikachu's gone. Here's the new version of Pikachu we gotta have.
Yep.
Exactly. But yeah, they had also the manga, clothing and a bunch of that stuff. But I didn't really get any of the toys. I mean, I would get the toys if they were released through like the Burger King had a bunch of events with Pokemon, and McDonald's had a lot of events with Pokemon. So if they were like free toys that came with like a gift, I would get them. But yeah, my parents were so mad at Pokemon because of how much I was obsessed with it. They're like, "Why do you need cards? Why do you need toys? Why do you need all these things, Pokemon?" So they were like, "No." They're like, I think they even refused to get me after Gold and Silver. They refused to get me another game that I bought Sapphire with my own birthday money, and I actually was grounded because I wasted the money on the Pokemon game instead of getting something that like shoes or something that they wanted me to buy. It's like that's for you to buy for me. It's like
Yeah, that's
it's
the point of birthday money is to
like
spend it on stupid kid stuff.
so I bought Sapphire, and then I couldn't play it for I think it was almost a year later. It was a crazy, like, people were like they're already finished with the game. I got to like experience it, through other people playing. But by the time that I played it, I was like, I know what to do. I know what to do. But yeah, so I didn't really get to experience like a bunch of the toys and a bunch of other stuff. But it was because I had made myself so obsessed with Pokemon that they were like, no.
Whoops.
Well, I think that is, now that we're, just a mere 58 minutes in to this episode, I think that primes the audience really well for this debate that we're about to have here.
So actually, I'm going to do something that future Andrew doesn't have to. we're cutting this episode here. Come back for the second half of the episode in part 2, where we will have the debates. Yeah, you got that right, guys. This isn't future Andrew cutting in this time. You know why? So my voice can sound the same as the rest of the recording. So we're going to take just a very quick break. Thank you for everyone who's listened in up to this point. Please, 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 someone other than Anthony's sister, Tyler's wife, or Annie, please comment in and say that Tyler needs to open one of his things. If we get 2 of you to just comment in and say, open a figure. That's all you got to say. Open a figure.
Don't do it. Don't listen to him.
But thank you again for listening in here, guys. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on Spotify, follow us on YouTube. But thanks guys for getting us this far. I'll see you in the second half, and keep nerding out.